and welcome to my top 5 Peter Davison stories, or should I say top 5 Fifth Doctor stories. Now I've sort of gone away from these videos and they've sort of piled up to, well, I've sort of missed 3 Doctors in their month, but because Paul McGann doesn't have any sort of episodes bar the TV movie, and I haven't listened to any of his audios as the Doctor, so I'm not really going to do Paul McGann, as I said back in January. So this gives me a good opportunity to sort of do these videos, and basically my channel's been doing a lot of Tom Baker videos, so it's a bit nice to do a different Doctor. Well, 3 in fact, Peter Davison, Colin and Sylvester McCoy. So this is quite nice, and then I'll go back to Tom Baker, and then I'll review some of the stories what aren't Tom Baker. Give Tom Baker a bit of a rest, and in October I will review Terror of the Zygons. Well, probably be just for special features, possibly the story as well. I don't know what I'm going to do for the time capsule. Okay, so at number 5, with no more rambling I hope, we have Frontios. Now, I watched this story about a month ago now, and it instantly became my favourite, one of my favourite Peter Davison stories. Yeah, that's a bit of a stupid thing to say because it wouldn't be on your list if you didn't enjoy it. Okay, so the cliffhangers are brilliant in this, especially episode 1, and because you're just wondering what has happened to the. I'm not going to say if you haven't seen the story because it will just ruin the whole sort of ending. I like the idea that the planet's at war with something that we don't actually know. All we know is there's something underground and causing these bombardments, and that the bombardments are done very well for the time this was produced. The tractators, these sort of woodlouse sort of things there, are very sort of creepy and eerie. They may not look good, but I think the woodlouse thing does sort of come across very well with this sort of armoured sort of back, and yeah, the idea that they use sort of mind power to control people is very interesting and is played throughout the story. Well, especially sort of episode 3 and 4. We get to learn a bit more about Turlough, but not as much as Planet of Fire, because that's when we actually go to his home world and we actually sort of discover the culture of Turlough's people. Yeah, there's a very striking line in this story, and it does really does sum up Frontios, and it is Frontios buries its own dead. Now I think that's a very striking line because the tractators use these sort of bodies to they use them for their machinery. They put the bodies in to sort of power the machineries in a way. Machines. Oh dear. I can see this is going to be quite a stressful video. Okay, at number 4 we have Resurrection of the Daleks. Now this is a very good Dalek story, not as good as Remembrance of the Daleks, but it is a strong sort of Dalek story from the 80s. Now what I like about this is it's a very dark story. It's a very dark Dalek story. I mean, you've got people mutating into these sort of horrid sort of disformed figures, especially when that gas goes out. And yeah, it's nice to see that the Daleks are using drones, you know, that they have that sort of power. And it's nice to see Davros, because Davros was put into, was it cryogenic status? And he was sort of in a sort of icy thing, and the Daleks got into a bit of bother. The Movellans got a virus what affected their casing, so basically destroyed their casing. So the Daleks crept back to Davros and go, "Alright Davros, we've got you out of cryogenic status, you know, could you help us find a cure for this?" And Davros is like, "Yeah, I'll find you a cure, as long as you don't put me back in the cryogenic status." Peter Davison has a chance to kill Davros. Obviously he doesn't, because then Davros wouldn't be in Revelation, Remembrance and the 2 new series Dalek stories. Yes, again, like Terror of the Autons using the police, an authoritative figure and a trustworthy figure is simply terrifying, and yes, very good. At number 3 we have Kinder. Now Kinder is a very interesting story. It's a Tegan story basically, and we get to explore her sort of mind when the Mara sort of is in possession of her mind. Now I love the idea that the chimes, these sort of glass sort of chimes, sort of set it all off. Very, again, an eerie sort of story. Yeah, it's a really good 4-part story, and the Mara is very interesting, using a snake, very much like Planet of the Spiders, using sort of people's fears to give that sort of creature a bit more of a status. Yeah, so if you like Tegan, this is a definite watch. Yeah, at number 2 we have the Caves of Androzani. That may be a shock. Now, what I like about this story is that Peter Davison is bolder than he's ever been before. Normally, he sort of, the person who stands back. This is when he sort of goes, right, it's my time to shine now. You guys shut it. I'm busy here. And I love the scene when he's running across the sort of plains and he's being shot by sort of Sharajek, sort of rebel people. And you just see all like the blast and the mud blast, and you just see him running, and he's slowly dying, which is really incredible, because it's a really good scene, because when he's on the rocket in part 3, I think it is, the cliffhanger, and he's like, you're not going to stop me now. He's determined to get to Perry because Perry and him are infected with a disease, spectrotoxemia, I think, and is slowly dying from it, and Perry is as well, so he's only got enough of the sort of bat's milk to save Perry, causing him to regenerate into Colin Baker. Now Sharajek is very much like a Beauty and the Beast sort of thing, like the Beast, because like, Perry's got such fine skin, he's sort of in love with her in a way, and Perry's like, oh, you're a freak, you get away from me. Yes, I think it's very bold for Peter Davis. He's slowly dying, but he's determined to get that sort of bat's milk to Perry, which I really do like. That he chose his friends over his own life, even though he does have numerous ones, and is a typical Doctor thing. So this is a story for Peter Davison to shine. So at number 1, I did say in that actual review, it is the Visitations. I know, I'm a bit crazy for choosing it, but yes, crazy. The Visitations, I've said before, I like stories in history. I like the stories we're not actually sure how they started, and Doctor Who comes along and goes, right, we think this happened, and this is no exception really, because this story starts the Great Fire of London, and I think that is a cleverly done, the pterodactyls. That's the problem with the 80s, they all had sort of T sort of names for the monsters. Yes, as I said, they started the Great Fire of London, which is a very sort of big part of London's history in a way, because it caused the redesign of London. I love the android. The android is brilliant. It really is some of the 80s with all the glitter and just all the sparkly stuff. But I think that the sort of disguise it had as death, if I can get it there, was very good, because people in the 1600s were a bit wary about that, because they thought bad stuff would happen. Because this was set in the time of the Great Plague, and death was all around, and seeing the sort of Grim Reaper was like, oh, I don't like it. There's a brilliant moment when the Doctor's about to get beheaded, and he's like, oh, not again. I just thought, the Mask of Madagora, because that's when the Doctor nearly got beheaded. The pterodactyl is a very sort of good monster, sort of like an exotic fish. So that's one sort of way to put you off your fish and chips. But I do love this story. It's a brilliant one. I think this was the first actual proper Peter Davison story I saw, so this is where it's got a sort of special place in my heart, because I think the first Peter Davison story I saw was the Five Doctors, but I didn't really want to include that because it's with other Doctors, so you don't really see the full Peter Davison Doctor shine. Really, it's, you know, with other Doctors, so you don't really get a feel for his Doctor. But I genuinely fell in love with this when I saw it when I was about 8. So yes, it is quite a really good. Well, it's a really good story. Well, for me anyway. May be different for others, but again, it's my opinion. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. My next top 5 will obviously be Colin Baker for the 6th Doctor. Yeah, so thank you for watching and goodbye.